We're back with a 2-round Superflex rookie mock with landing spots. So first time I've done that in a little bit. We're using Chad Reuter's 4-round mock. And the reason I love this mock is because there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, and it makes it just a little bit more real. And so I think that's the theme of this exercise here. We've got some landing spots, some that we anticipate, right? Some that we expect. But then especially as we get outside of round one, things get a little bit ugly. So let's jump into this, guys. And if you want, link in the description just to follow along with the mock draft. I'll be, of course, updating and explaining with each pick I make. But at the 101, I think it's really no brainer. For me, it's Caleb Williams, and it's going to be that way. All right. He is going to the Bears. A little bit weird, a little bit playing coy, obviously, in an interview setting, off on a whim off the cuff from Steve Wyche there after his pro day at USC, but he's going to the Chicago Bears, and Ryder recognizes that with this mock. And then we go on to the 102 here. Do we go quarterback? Do we go receiver? Look, for me, it's Drake May, who goes third to the Patriots. And so I know this is a bit of a hot take, not a bit. It's a lot of a hot take, but I'm sticking with my evaluation of Drake May. I believe in the prospect. I believe in the player. And in a super flex league, look, I know receivers are the absolute shine of the attention in Dynasty, right? Receivers, we all love them. We want more of them. But arguably, with how stacked this class is, I want to lean quarterback, at least prioritizing in the sense that if I'm a rebuilder, I want to take a swing because that offers me the most upside, truly. And so I got Drake May here at the 102 to the Patriots. And I want to make it clear with the Patriots. It looks like on the surface, or the perception, let me make that clear. The perception is not great at all with the Patriots landing spot, okay? The perception is, oh my God, look at Mac Jones, look at recent years. Things can change, all right? And it is a blank slate, a clean slate in a lot of ways, as much as you can possibly get in New England. Obviously, you got the Crafts at the top, but it is a complete overhaul. Okay. And what can happen with an overhaul? Well, look at a team like the Houston Texans, where we all hated their landing spot, right? Oh my God, I don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole. So with quarterbacks in particular, that's the theme of this. You can't get so overwhelmed by landing spot and obviously the narratives of, oh my God, well, they're such a bad roster. They're not throwing 50 guys out there on the field at once, okay? They have a quarterback, they've got an offensive line, there are receivers, there are running backs, okay? And the Patriots address said positions, we'll get into a little bit later in this mock. And they have addressed the offensive line in some fashion, okay? And they will address it in the draft. It's not just like they're getting dropped into the exact same horrible situation that the team was the previous year that led them to that position. Okay, I want to make that evident in just my 2 cents there. With the third pick, this is where we do go Marvin Harrison Jr. And we do go Marvin Harrison Jr. because he went 5th overall to the LA Chargers. And so I know there's a lot of discourse about Marv 101, Marv 102 at the worst. I like the top QBs of this class, and that will continue to compose the top end of my Superflex mocks, especially given the degree of NFL draft capital and that opportunity floor. All right. And on that note, we're going Jayden Daniels at the 104. He goes to the Washington Commanders. And so there's a lot of smoke trying to make sense of who Washington might go at number 2 overall, whether it's May, whether it's Daniels. All right. For me, Jayden Daniels, he's got obviously the dynamic rushing upside, and he can absolutely throw the ball deep down the field. He's not a one-trick pony, okay? And it really is 3 prime quarterback options, plus obviously receiving options like a Malik Neighbors here at the 105. Malik goes at 6 to the New York Football Giants, which, look, I know it's not the most attractive landing spot. I get it. But at the same time, talent prevails. That is the mindset I will subscribe to. Talent prevails. And with a player like Malik Neighbors, he goes in there and talk about opportunity floor, opportunity ceiling. Look, the Giants are going to be forced to throw the ball. And I think Malik Neighbors, you just get the ball in his hands and magic can happen. So, moving on to the 106. This is where we go. Rome Odunze, a part of the top, rounding out the top tier, the top three of the receiver position. All right, with Rome Odunze, you're looking at a guy that went 8th overall in this mock via trades that kind of took place. He is an Arizona Cardinal. So you think the Arizona Cardinals, well, they're picking at 4 on the surface, right? Unless they do trade out, which there was some maneuvering that took place in this mock, a lot of chaos, I will totally admit, and that's what I love partly about this mock draft, really spicing things up with landing spots, and particularly with a lot of noise with the premium positions that are going to go early in this draft. A lot could happen. And so this is basically an agent of chaos, this mock draft, so to speak. And at the 107, for me, it's easily J.J. McCarthy. And I can understand an argument going a little bit higher because he goes 4th overall to the Minnesota Vikings. A huge trade up. Obviously, they made the trade to get 23. So now they've paired 11 with 23, and you figure they gotta just go up. They gotta go up. And so it looks like it might be J.J. McCarthy, depending on how early of a dance partner they might be able to find. I think this is incredible value here at the 107 in Superflex as we continue to move into the 108. And with the 108, it's Bo Nix for me. It's Bo Nix because he goes 12th overall to the Denver Broncos. And frankly, I have to honor that degree of investment. And I like Bo Nix as a player, right? You can check the receipts, check the previous mocks I've been doing dating back to 2023, end of 2023. And look where we find ourselves, right? Scenarios that are absolutely plausible. And with Bo Nix teaming up with Sean Payton, you think of just the type of on-schedule rhythm type player that Bo Nix can be, and in that Sean Payton type of system. Obviously, he's had success with players like Drew Brees in the past. Bo Nix, similar in the sense that, similar in the sense that he's not the most physically overwhelming, but he can absolutely be accurate, keep the chains moving, and he also offers some rushing upside. So I really like this, how this top 8's played out, how the quarterbacks obviously have been valued in this draft. But obviously we can't forget one of the best tight end prospects we've seen ever, Brock Bowers. He goes 10th overall to the New York Giants. Psych, the New York Jets. Just doing a little double take there. Brock Bowers at 10th to the Jets. Look, Aaron Rodgers, not maybe the most historically tight end targeting quarterback, so to speak, but Brock Bowers, I hate just slapping the tight end label on him. And in some ways, I know I've seen people saying it's not even fair maybe to say he's a tight end. I've seen, shout out to Brett Coleman, EJ Snyder there, Bootleg Football, talking about he's basically, don't take this wrong way, he's somewhat of an H-back, a Kyle Juszczyk of sorts, but on steroids in terms of his actual receiving capabilities. And look, that's still a very talented football player, very fantasy relevant football player in your leagues, regardless of if it's a tight end premium. Goes in there, I think can be the number 2 option with a Garrett Wilson. I know Mike Williams is in there, but I'm not totally worried about that potentially taken away from Brock Bowers' floor ceiling pendulum, so to speak. And so at the 110, this is when we go back to the receiver well. And for me, it is a Brian Thomas Jr., who is actually the 5th receiver off the board. He goes 24th to the Dallas Cowboys. Yep. To the Dallas Cowboys. Look, Brian Thomas, he can be, I think if he, hits his top end projection, right? He can be a receiver 1 in an offense, but in this, he's just got to be a receiver 2 to CeeDee Lamb, obviously one of the best, if not arguably the best last year. And so Dak Prescott, I think, can certainly support a Brian Thomas Jr. as that number 2 in that offense, and I think could very well be a 1,000+ yard receiver, a 10 touchdown plus guy. He is an explosive player. And so obviously you got CeeDee Lamb dominating in the short intermediate areas of the field, and then just the matchup nightmare that could present itself with Brian Thomas just going over the top. I mean, I love this for Brian Thomas Jr., but I know people are going to love in this mock. You love yourself some Xavier Worthy, who goes 19th overall. The Chiefs actually trade up to get Xavier Worthy here. And I know they've got Rashee Rice. They just signed Hollywood Brown. They've got, obviously, Travis Kelce. Could Xavier Worthy have an unbelievable, unreal first year? Sure. But for me, I'm sticking to my wide receiver 4 evaluation with Brian Thomas. Xavier Worthy, though, is an incredible late round pick in the first round in this scenario of a top 20 pick to the Kansas City Chiefs, and very well could assume quite a large role and then makes possibly Hollywood Brown obsolete. Interestingly enough, I mean, it's somewhat redundant because you've seen Hollywood, his name, get tossed around as a comp for Xavier Worthy. So just a little interesting in that sense. How do the Chiefs maybe really utilize the two in this hypothetical? But nonetheless, I mean, he's going to be a locked-in first-round pick in your dynasty drafts if he does go to the Kansas City Chiefs. At the 112, rounding out the first-round guys, and for me, look, I'm sticking true to how highly I value quarterbacks, and Michael Penix Jr. gets top end of the second round at pick 33. The Raiders kind of trade up a little bit to get their quarterback of the future. And for my money, a guy that is the starter. Obviously, they've got AOC there and Gardner Minshew now. I think Michael Penix, with his talent, I mean, it's really leaps and bounds above those two. And I think he's a starter. If not week 1, I think he's a starter by week 4, week 5. And so I want to take that shot. He's got unbelievable talent. Maybe not the craziest rushing upside, but I love Michael Penix going to the Las Vegas Raiders at pick 33 here, rounding out the first round of your Superflex drafts in this mock 6.0. Who goes at the top of round 2? Well, at the top of round 2, now we've got Jonathan Brooks, who goes 56th overall to the Dallas Cowboys. It's almost like the writing's on the wall in a lot of senses. You're seeing him do his rehab in the Cowboys facility with Cowboys doctors. So you know they've got as much info on Jonathan Brooks as anybody in the NFL. And so, is it just a match made in heaven? I think so. Could he go even higher at the back end of the first in this case? I could understand that. I would support that. But for me, with how this mock's shaking out and with how highly I just value inherently, obviously, receivers, but more importantly, quarterbacks in a Superflex format, he just doesn't quite crack the first round. But nonetheless, still an awesome pick and player available. Then as we go on to the 202 here, at the 202, this is where, look, we're going to start a little bit of a return at the receiver position. And for me, look, we see Adonai Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell goes in this mock. He gets top 50, barely, goes 49th overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. And so with this landing spot, this hypothetical, I think T. Higgins, I think he gets traded. I just think he ends up somewhere else. Last I've checked, look, you see the Bengals for T as the most favored spot, the most favored team that he plays for at the start of this season in 2024, but not by a lot. And I just think in this scenario, you get a type of player in Adonai Mitchell that compares very favorably, obviously, to the type of player that T. Higgins was at the time they drafted him. Basically a similar degree, maybe a little bit less of a significant investment in terms of draft capital that they made with, obviously, a T. Higgins who was drafted in the top 40, but we're talking in the top 50 still. And no Tyler Boyd. I mean, I haven't seen where he's still out there. I think he goes to Pittsburgh. We'll see. But I just think the Bengals move on from T. Higgins. You're seeing players get tagged and traded this season. Most recently, we've just had L'Jarius Sneed, right? But nonetheless, and you see Ayuk's name, although he's not tagged, I guess, to be clear, there is a receiver shakeup. I just see it happening in terms of players traded in and around the NFL draft, and partly because of how talented the receiver position. And so with Adonai Mitchell, unbelievable player and awesome value for my money here at the 202. And at the 203, we continue the receiver train. We continue the receiver train. We go with Xavier Legette here. Xavier Legette goes pick 46 to the Indianapolis Colts. And look, Shane Steichen there, he had a lot of success with A.J. Brown, right, in their year. And then he goes, becomes the head coach. Obviously, the mantra, he says, throw to score, run to win. And so I look at a guy like Xavier Legette, and obviously they got Michael Pittman there, right? But with Xavier Legette, he's a guy that is in the mold of an A.J. Brown, all right? Physical. You think he's taller than he is, but in around 6'1", 220, a machine after the catch, and just a physical presence, tough to bring down. I love the potential of Anthony Richardson. We know his Gazooka, just throw it deep. I love this Xavier Legette landing spot. Maybe not the sexiest, but that's the theme as we're getting into the second round, right? Beggars can't be choosers, right? As the saying goes. At the 204, this is where we go Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey goes a pick before Xavier Legette here, 45 to the New Orleans Saints. And so, look, there's A.T. Perry there, but really for me, it's Chris Olave, right? And then it's Ladd McConkey. And so, Ladd McConkey, I think he could very well possibly have an upside type in a role similar to maybe what a Hunter Renfrow did at his peak, obviously with when Derek Carr was over there. And so I just think of Ladd McConkey. Look, he's got the skill set. He's going to be able to get open. He's, I think, going to be a QB's best friend, especially with Derek Carr maybe not in his prime, so to speak. I think it's going to be some easy targets, some easy opportunity floor for Ladd McConkey. And I've got to recognize and honor at a core this top 50 draft capital. And the theme will be, look, it doesn't really get any sexier for receiver landing spots, okay? Doesn't quite become so evident or so clear for my money. You check out the mock. You tell me. But moving on to the 205 here. At the 205, look, for me, this is when we still stick with receiver. And for me, it's Keon Coleman, who goes 59th overall in this to the Houston Texans. And so I know it's a lot of mouths to feed, so to speak. But look, we got to see Tank Dell recover from that injury first, right? Get back on the field. And with Keon Coleman, I just see a guy that would be somewhat of a feature point in this Houston Texans offense, and a guy that I just believe in, all right? Maybe I'm drafting him too high here, but ultimately I really don't think I am. When I see, obviously, CJ Stroud there being able to support multiple receivers, and I just like what Keon Coleman offers that Houston Texans offense to be a real red zone threat, all right? And so I know, look, it's not so clear, so certain. A lot of ambiguity with a team like the Texans, right? Especially in terms of a receiver landing spot. But I'm taking a shot here. And isn't that more or less the theme of the second round? I mean, why not? Okay. Moving on to the 2-6. This is where we really start a train of running backs. Starting with, if he, guess I'll just type him in here, W-R-I. It's Jaylen Wright. It's Jaylen Wright who goes 66th overall to the Arizona Cardinals. And so, look, you've got just James Conner there for one more year, okay? One more year. And I look with Jaylen Wright, I think he has an opportunity to really make an impact year one. Obviously, that's where I'm drafting. That's why I'm drafting him in a sense, right? In the second round here. Year one to be a potential running threat, but a receiving threat as well. And I like, look, James Conner, obviously he's your bulkier, kind of ground and pound, maybe earlier down type guy, but I don't see it. I see him maybe there for, obviously he's got his contract, but I don't see necessarily how he maybe stays too far beyond that. And I think then it's just going to be the Jaylen Wright show. And if not, if he doesn't take the reins already from a potential James Conner injury, no, not hoping anything like that for a player, obviously, but middle of the season. I think Jaylen Wright, look, I like this Jaylen Wright landing spot a lot. There's maybe some other cases to be made here at the running back position, which now we'll get into with a Mr. Trey Benson, who goes just right, kind of neck and neck with Jaylen Wright. Although it's, to be clear, it's the early third, which I think, look, 50 to 100 plus or minus maybe 5-10 picks. That's where we really see the running back sweet spot of this draft. That's just how I'm convicted in that sense. So we got a Jaylen Wright 66th here to the Cardinals. Then we have a Trey Benson here 68th to the New England Patriots. And look, with Ramondre, it's his final year. I know they've got Mr. Antonio Gibson down there to be a potential receiving threat. But for me, it's more so betting on the talent, underlying talent, the player, obviously, with the Trey Benson, as I similarly have done here with Jaylen Wright. Okay? And so these are guys that have really fantasy conducive skill sets. And so I'm taking the upside shot here at the running back position in the middle of the second round, particularly because, look, we get move pass receiver and the attractiveness relatively of those landing spots. And so this is where I think a run on receivers is very realistic in your drafts, barring some crazy level of investment at the running back position. But we continue this run with a Will Shipley. Will Shipley, who actually goes, I identified the sweet spot 50 to 100, but a little bit plus or minus maybe after. Will Shipley, that goes just outside the top 100 at 105 to the LA Chargers. And so I'm really liking this potential for Will Shipley. And look, I'm a South Carolina fan at heart. But with Will Shipley, talk about a guy that really does have a multifaceted skill set. I think he could very well be a potential second, third round type, or second, third down rather, type back in that LA Chargers offense. We know how much Greg Roman and obviously Harbaugh, their identity collectively, how much they want to impose themselves on the opposition via the running back position, right? And so with Will Shipley here, I really like this. I'm totally willing to take a shot with Will here at the 208. Then moving on with the 209. This is when we do take a bit of a detour back to the receiver position. And look, maybe you argue, why the hell was he falling this far? Could he even go interchange him maybe with a Keon Coleman? I understand that. But for me, it's more player preference at a core. With Troy Franklin here, he goes 51 in this mock to the Steelers. And so part of my rationale, look, I think it's an okay landing spot, right, for Troy Franklin. Don't really love the Steelers. Look, Russell Wilson, they got Russell Wilson there. Dangerous, the Danger-Rich sandwich guy himself, Subway. They've got him. But we're not talking prime Seahawks Russell Wilson, okay? And if anything, George Pickens, I think, is the clear one in that offense. And so I don't know how clear, how evident Troy Franklin's possible impact is in that offense, particularly if you also factor in, look, for my money, Justin Fields steps into that gig at some point in 2024. I just don't see how he doesn't. And so then, look, I love Justin Fields. We love him for fantasy, but then it's a history of, look, I don't know how he can really support a number two, right? Just some food for thought, some context for me. But Troy Franklin, nonetheless, look, he's actually a little bit of a riser from my previous mock. But at the 210 here, this is where we go back to the running back position. We go with Mr. Blake Corm here, who actually goes 47th, actually RB1 off the board to the New York Giants. And look, I don't love that. I don't really like that. Full disclosure. Blake Corm, he's a guy that, look, he can butter his bread on first, second down, right? But that Giants team, talk about an offensive line, right? Just talk about talent in general. Obviously, they get him Malik Neighbors in this draft. And receivers, I'm more willing to obviously just bet on the talent. but on the individual, right? And obviously, given the NFL, it's a passing league. And a Blake Corum there, look, he gets a significant level of investment, but they kind of gave a relatively significant level of investment in the running back landscape to a Devin Singletary. And so he's a guy that I think then is at least there. You look at the contract, it's a multi-year, 2, 3 years almost upwards on the high end. So with Blake Corum, I think it would really be a committee, right? A split backfield there with New York. And it's not a committee that I'm so in love with. So I think that's just where Blake Corum kind of falls for me. Still a second round pick. Let me know you guys if you are just betting on the level of investment, which I understand. But for me, with running backs, in some degree, I need to recognize potential opportunity, how quick you maybe can get there. And obviously, what skills do you provide? Are you a dual threat in terms of obviously as a runner, but as a receiver? So that's just why Blake Corum kind of falls a little bit here to me. If he were to go to the Chargers, right? Let's say he got even the Will Shipley. Let's say he falls and you flip landing spots, right? He's, pick 100, give or take, top of the fourth. End of day 3 or end of day 2, early day 3. With Blake Corum, I could see him launching up into the mix right after a Jonathan Brooks, honestly. But with this, I just don't love it. And I feel like I'm not alone in this sentiment. But rounding out with the 211, we go with back to receiver, right? Back to receiver. And we've got Mr. Tez Walker. Goes 67th to the Washington Commanders. And look, I think he becomes immediately a wide receiver 2 there. I know they've got Jahan Dotson, but he's kind of we haven't really seen a lot from him as much as we maybe hoped as, that top 15 type draft pick. But with Tez Walker, I like he's a big receiver, very athletic, and Aiden Daniels has a history. Obviously, he gets the Commanders' second overall investment in this mock from Reuter. He's got a history of being able to support bigger, faster receivers, right? And I think it's a nice fit there with Tez Walker. Just not something I'm overly eager to throw ahead of these receivers, or running backs rather. But rounding out the 212, this is where I think we really get at how wild this mock is from Reuter. But I love it. It's chaos at the same time. We go with a SIN. Mr. Ben Sinat goes 39th overall. Yes, you heard it. 39th overall. It's tongue twisting me. 39th overall to the Carolina Panthers. Okay? And so, talk about tight end premium. I got to recognize him here. What the hell? What happened to Jatavian Sanders? He went 53rd overall to my Philadelphia Eagles. We've already got Dallas Goedert there. And so with Ben Sinat, he's a guy that basically walks into the tight end 1 in Carolina. And I think I have to recognize him accordingly. But, guys, that does it with this mock. Notables that were left out. Look, there's no Roman Wilson. He goes to the Bears in this, in the 70s. There's no Brendan Rice. There is, I obviously just mentioned Jatavian Sanders. There's no Braylon Allen in particular. He goes in the 90s to, he goes to the Buccaneers. And so, look, you've got Rachaad White already there for a couple more seasons with his contract. Maybe a first kind of similar situation to Corm, but not even near the level of investment. And then if my guy Marshawn Lloyd, 82, he goes to the Colts. So just not a lot of ugly, but still a lot of good. Let me know how much you guys would like, what landing spots you would really love, what I got so far wrong in this mock. I've done my best. This is my 2 cents, guys. Let me know what videos you want to see in the near future. Have a great rest of your weekend, guys. I will see you in the next one. Have a great one. Peace.